Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Tom Cosentino from Park right here. Katrina's gonna be running a little bit behind schedule. She's trying to juggle with most people with Parkinson's. She's trying to juggle too many things at one point. But today I have a guest, Dennis Lombardi. I met Dennis through a mutual support group, and a couple of weeks ago he used the word holistic as it applied to where you meet your Parkinson's and way you deal with it. Very few people use that term holistic. So when he said that, I'm like, I need to talk to this guy because he's one of the few. He's an outlier. So I just want to take a moment, have Dennis introduce himself and a little bit about what he's doing with his Parkinson's and the Parkinson's community at large.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for asking me on. It's always good to talk about this and bring in new information to people because that's how I learned and how I put together my team. Yeah, I'm Dennis Lombardi. I'm from Long Island, New York. I was first diagnosed in 2019, and of course things were going on before that, and I was trying to kind of in denial about it. And first couple of years were so-so, and then things started getting crazy, and then I looking at everything online, I'm thinking, there's a lot of dark information out there and people saying
Mhm.
your life is over to you'll never get to feed yourself and all this crap when you get older. And I stumbled upon Dr. Lori Mishley and the Parkinson School out in Seattle, and that changed my whole direction. The word holistic came from there, and integrative, where looking at the whole body, what's going on in your body completely, what foods do you eat, what's your exercise, what's your
Yeah.
if you're working, what's your family like and social life, and try to look at it all from all those angles, and then do everything we can that's in our control, like eating and exercise and mental stimulation and learning new instruments like she told me to do, just stimulate that brain, and all of
Mhm.
it together has made a good difference.
Well, I know it's hard to see this, but this is a printout I got from
Yeah.
Doctor, and you know what I love about it is she doesn't how she does the surveys of individuals and she plots those, and she looks at the people that are healthy, where they are in the spectrum versus people who aren't, and look for things in common. And I like the approach she says. I'm not telling you that eating dairy is going to cause Parkinson's. I'm simply saying that people who don't eat dairy have a better outcome with their Parkinson's versus people who eat dairy. It's I'm just providing you the data, and it's for you. It's up to you to figure out how the data impacts you.
Yeah, she's very data orientated from the beginning. I love when she speaks. Her watching her video, I'm like, she's got common sense. She's very smart. She talks in a way that everyone can understand it. And she's so data driven. If there's not enough data and proof that something is beneficial, she doesn't even bring it up.
Yeah, and I know this isn't sometimes when I give a compliment, it doesn't come out as a compliment, but she's got those like killer eyes. I mean, when she does her thing, she's zeroed in. Nothing's going to break her concentration. She's there. She's focused, and it's like I really appreciate that about her.
And she's very focused and very genuine. That was another thing I noticed after our first conversation. I feel like I've known her forever after one, hour and a half video conference. And but she's genuine. One of the first things she said to me was, "My job is to keep you healthy till you're 100."
I like that.
And I said, "Well, I'm with you, but I think physically and structurally, I said I got some issues that we'll see where they're at when I'm 80 and worry about 100."
I used to say I had all my original parts, but I have aftermarket parts now in my body. That just
Thank
comes
God
with
they're
age.
available. Thank God they're available for us now.
Yeah. Unrelated to Parkinson's, though, I had a back surgery that failed, and the second back surgery to correct the first back surgery,
Oh
and then a
God,
replacement hip. And I'll tell you, getting that hip replaced was the greatest thing that's ever happened to me.
it's amazing. I heard you're up the same day. They want you walking right
Yeah,
away.
I walked in with a walker because the pain was so great, and I walked out just without the walker.
It's awesome when things work right.
Yeah. And the whole thing was this is the crazy part. The whole thing took about 45 minutes once they pushed me into the room.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is amazing.
So I tie that into being an advocate for yourself. And certainly with you reaching out to her, you're certainly being an advocate for yourself and then spreading that up, letting other people know about that as well.
Absolutely. I years ago I had some anxiety about healthcare, and I thought I had cancer back in 2012 and 2013, and it just I went through some period where I had to get a physical a psychologist to talk with because I was worried that so bad the anxiety was is unbelievable, and I worked that out, and then forgot where I was going with that, but it's
But the
like
anxiety and
that made me more hypersensitive to myself, my health. I used to be a bodybuilder back in like the 80s
I
and
was about to say
90s.
you look like a middle linebacker.
Yeah, I love just lifting heavy weights. I was like 250 pounds, and I think I had 15% body fat, and
Mm.
it just felt good lifting those weights. And so I went back to that. I went to college for biology and nutrition and just like foods, like how does the body work? How do we create energy? And so when all that happened, I took that fear through the anxiety with the therapist. I said, well, I just got to learn as much as I can when the Parkinson's came. And
Hmm.
I said, it's not a death sentence like some, places pointed out to be very dark. And then I just kind of, I have a problem of over talking sometimes, and I talk for a living, right?
Bingo.
And I love sharing information because, for me, I figure if something helped me, it's probably going to help other people. So it's like, why not just share what I did? And
Yeah.
I've always learned to have to say, I learned this from the Harvard Medical School, or I learned this from Dr. Mishley, because I don't want people to think like, oh, what are you, a know-it-all? It's like, no, I just learn a lot, I read a lot, and it's from a underlying fear that I want to know I'm doing everything I possibly can
Bingo.
to be, to keep my quality of life better. And I know I'm not perfect, so.
I
And
was
I've
on a
learned
group
the 80
call.
20.
We're on a group call yesterday talking about accountability and such, and this one person mentioned that they uses the doctor's portal to communicate, but the doctor doesn't reply back. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do? I don't know. So you pick up the phone, you call the doctor's office, and you say, why isn't Dr. So-and-so returning my messages through the portal? And then ask for, when is he going to do it? And just put them on the spot. Just don't wait. You have to be, not, I don't want to use the word combative, but when you want to advocate for yourself, you've got to be willing to put your neck out.
You got to be a little assertive with being polite. And sometimes I went through 4 neurologists before I found one that I really liked. And it's funny you say the portal. I put a message in there, within like 10-15 minutes, I'm getting answers back. So
Yeah, he answers me on Sundays, which is crazy. I reply back saying, what the hell are you doing working on a Sunday?
it's great that they're there for that. And
Well, we try to keep things simple, and I like to tell people 4 things when you're diagnosed. You got to find a great neurologist. And if you don't find one that you feel is caring for you or right for you, keep looking, because that's one of the keys. You got to have a good diet plan. Suddenly, eating those fried chicken and French fries isn't going to cut it any longer. You got to start exercising. And when I say exercise, I mean really exercising, not taking a walk around the block. And hopefully find a good support group where you can have conversations about this and what's going on and how is it affecting, because we're all in the same boat.
Right. We're all in different size boats, right? We all have different, some have different symptoms, although we're in the same arena, and we could all help each other. And the thing that I found interesting after like my diagnosis, I think it was like 3 years later, I started doing the rock steady boxing, or 2 years later.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm meeting people, and they're asking me all these questions about Parkinson's, because I just talk about it so much. And then I'll say, well, when were you diagnosed? They're like, oh, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, you're asking questions that you should have asked, or the doctor should have told you 7 years ago when you first got diagnosed. I'm like, where you been? I try to say. And
I think they're almost afraid to talk to their doctors, I believe.
Right. And one support group, the nurse that runs it, she said, we were talking about natural supplements and cannabis and all that. She goes, well, you can't do anything until you talk to your doctor. And I said, well, the doctor is not our boss of our body.
Right.
They're supposed to be guides for us, and they're specialists, but they don't control what we do or don't do for our own body. And so you got to educate. And so after so many times of giving out all these websites like Davis Finney and Michael J. Fox and the Parkinson School and so forth, I just put a website up. I call it My Parkinson's Coach. I put a little bit of my story, and I just got a page with all those links, so I could tell someone, just go to this website, go to the link page, and everything that is on that link page is where I found information, and positive information, in a way where it's like, yeah, it sucks we have Parkinson's, and here's all the things we can do for ourselves: the diet, the exercise, the mindset, and you just always have to push forward and learn and do it.
I love to show this. It's hard to see, but that's my neurologist with me at a symposium. And in my hand, I have a little piece of wood that says I'm with stupid. And he's got the picture with the same thing pointing to me that I'm with stupid. I've been with him now for 9 years. And I drive 100, I move, so I drive 110 miles every 6 months to see him. And when we talk about like next Tuesday, I have an appointment with him. So I've already put together my list of things that I want to talk about. I'm going to put it in the portal. And then when I come in that meeting with him next Tuesday, he already knows what we want to talk about. We don't spend the first half of the meeting saying, what's going on? What do you want? It's already there. So it's all business. And then we goof off for like 10 minutes.
Right. And you get right to it. And
Yeah.
you got to get along with the docs. And my doc, same thing. I see him. It's unprecedented in New York, but he's in the room with me for 25, 30, 40 minutes.
Wow.
And he talks personal stuff and telling me about his daughter, who's a musician. She teaches at Berkeley School of Music. She's teaching like classical music. He goes, I don't understand what she does. Read this on her website. And I said, it doesn't matter that you don't understand. She's doing what she loves to do. And then we get to the other stuff. So it's the relationship's there. And even when I told him, hey, I'm working with Dr. Mishley at the Seattle Integrative and we're doing all this stuff and everything she's saying is pretty much on the same line as what you're saying. So what do you think about it? He goes, oh, it's great. He goes, I've heard of her. He goes, if you're having success, do it. Like when I brought up cannabis, he's like, does it help in you? I said, with a few things. He goes, all right, keep doing it.
No, that's because my guy said is he doesn't, like most neurologists, there's like 100 chemicals. They don't know how they all interact with the body. So he felt like in his perspective, he didn't feel comfortable telling me to go forward with it. And it's not because, but he's more I look at him more as my consultant at this point, or I call it a Jiffy Lube. I go every 6 months, he changes the oils and he kicks the tires and sends, just come back in 6 months or 6,000 miles, whatever comes first.
Right. And I respect doctors that'll say, hey, I don't know enough about it. I can't say to do it and not do it. We've had doctors up here at seminars like, you absolutely cannot do it. You can have psychosis, hallucinations. And he goes through the list. I said, those are the same symptoms from carbidopa levodopa. So what's the difference? I said, and it's natural. And I get him with this is a scientific thing. We have inside our bodies an endocannabinoid system. And then there's a plant that grows that has cannabinoids. So we have an endocannabinoid receptor system, and there's a plant with cannabinoids. It's like, I think there's some alliance there that just like every other natural plant and food and herbal things that help with certain things, there's a use for it. And so many people get different benefits from it. And there's so many different strains like tomatoes, right? You got beefsteak tomato and cherry tomatoes and, all these different types, the same thing. And they all do a little different. And, I found some different strains that help with pain management. Some help with the tremors. The strains that help with the tremors are unfortunate on the heavier side. So I only use those in the evening when I'm not driving or going somewhere because it'll make me a little tired, but the tremors almost stop. Then I have stuff, sativa is the one strain. It helps with apathy. It helps me want to do stuff instead of just sitting there saying, no, I'll do everything later. It makes me like want to play guitar, go see some clients, make a phone call, talk to someone, listen to music, whatever it is. So, and there's so little, like I tell people, you have a beer or two, a drink or two, you relax. Same thing with cannabis. You never know when I've used it.
Right.
You're never like, it's not like drinking a whole bottle of vodka. You're totally trashed. But I respect the doctors that'll say, hey, I don't know enough about it. I can't recommend anything. And, the ones that poo-poo anything kind of like bothers me. It's like, hey, you're in a practice. That's what a medical, it's practice. And,
absolutely. I always use the expression, I call it the George Costanza theory now. When people don't know if they're not sure if they should say something or do something, I say, just simply put, ask yourself, what would George do? If George is going to the neurologist and he's just saying, no, what would George do? Would he just say, okay, and leave? George would say, no, I'm George. This is what I need. And I try to make it real easy in the sense, because everybody knows George Costanza.
absolutely.
You don't have to worry about, well, what's the relationship I have with my mechanic, my doctor, or if it's wrong, it's wrong. And then you just do a George on them.
Right. And if I grew my hair in, I have the George Costanza hairdo. So that's why I shave.
Well, my neighbor did that. My neighbor has Parkinson's as well. And he unfortunately had to go to the hospital for something. And they ran a series of tests that he didn't approve. And they were expensive because they never asked him for his consent.
Wow.
So he said, he goes, I did a Tom. I was like, what's a Tom? He said, I told them that I didn't consent to it. They did it without my knowledge. I'm not paying for it. He goes, I said, oh, now George Costanza is a Tom. So I had my first win with a Tom, but he said what was interesting is when he got there, he just he knew he had to do something, but he wasn't quite sure. So he just basically said no. And that's where the conversation starts.
Absolutely.
Oh, we just got a big thumbs up from a friend of mine. He likes you. Not in,
Right. That's great. Thank you very much.
He's a physical. I'll give a shout out to him. He's he's not a physical therapist, but he works with Parkinson's patients in Canada. So when we talk to people in Canadians, we talk very slow so they can understand us. Big love to you, Doug. Doug's going to be on the show hopefully soon. He does something that's really cool called Dopa Beats. It's drumming, Parkinson's patients and drumming.
Oh, that's great.
I kept saying we need to do like a Dopa Beat special where you guys just entertain us for like a half hour or something.
Yeah, just get any musician on, and we'll just try to play together. And I always said my next band. I'm trying to. Since COVID, I had a bass player pass away, and I auditioned, made a couple bands, but they just didn't work out. And I've been holding off now. But I said if I find a couple other musicians, if we got a keyboard player in boxing, a sax player, if I get a drummer and a bass player, then our new band will call ourselves Tremor and the Shakes.
I like that.
I love there was a band years ago called what's his name, Fitz and the Tantrums. And I always loved that name to play on the words. And I'm like, yeah, Tremor and the Shakes. That'd be pretty cool.
Now that I'm retired, I thought I'd like to start a coffee house and call it Shaky Grounds, California influenced coffee. That's just so it's a play on the shaky, because then they have to figure out what that exactly means. And I love doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Shaky Grounds featuring California coffee grinds.
Right.
And it comes in a shaky. Oh, so.
That's how I use that joke all the time. I make a great shaken martini these days.
We go off on tangents, but I did a Michael J. Fox advocacy a while back where we talked to our representatives from our congresswoman and our U.S. senators. And so I asked them if I could do a joke, and they said, well, let's hear it. And so it was basically one of those mean, nasty Republicans who don't want to support any kind of research decided to vote against the National Act to End Parkinson's. But he was requested to go to one of his larger support group meetings because there's a large constituency base. He wasn't sure what he was going to get when he walked in the room. So he goes there, he opens the door, and he looks at his assistant and goes, I think it's okay. They're all waving to us. And they told me the town we're here to make friends with them. I said, yeah, I know, but they're these particular ones happen to be on our side. But it's just trying to make a larger point that people in Congress that were asking for money, they don't get it. They don't understand it.
They're not in it. They're not listening to us. And
no. And that's the part about advocacy. It's like, I don't know if I feel bad. I guess I do feel bad about this because in the sense it's not, when Brett Favre came out and said that he had Parkinson's, part of me was, of course I felt bad for him because you feel bad for anybody with Parkinson's, but there's another part of me that says, how do we get more airplay, if you will? How do we get the message out to other people? And when he announced that he was on the major, CBS News, ESPN, and not that he was doing it as a Parkinson's advocate, but by nature, by definition, when he talked about Parkinson's, he's being an advocate.
Absolutely. It's got to bring awareness to it. And it's amazing that it takes like a sports star or someone that high up to get more attention to it when it should just be attention. Because I know on Long Island, they said from 1995 to 2015, Parkinson's diagnosis more than doubled. They're claiming from 2015 to 2035, they're going to more than triple. And when you go to the boxing classes, there's a few hundred people I know in a couple different classes. I'm sure there are thousands of people with Parkinson's out there, and they need to hear this information. They need to know it's this prominent in the area, and stop using the pesticides that they found that are linked to it. So,
well, I was in the military, and I spent a number of months at Fort McClellan, Alabama, in 1977. And while initially there wasn't a presumption, after the PACT Act in 2022, they made a decision in the sense that they needed to investigate Fort McClellan. And after 5 years, I was just determined to be disabled for the military because they felt there is a connection between my Parkinson's and my time in the military, just albeit 4 months at that location.
Right, whatever chemicals we're exposed to at different places like that.
I mean, they produced Agent Orange there in the 70s for Vietnam. But the interesting thing that led me to just the other day, where we live in the community, we have like community want ads. If someone's looking to buy something or sell something, they put it. And someone was selling the grill, and I'm like, I want that grill. So I called and went over to see him. And when I pulled in, I see his Jeep. It says Marine Corps veteran, So I said, okay, first he's a Marine. I was in the Army, so I got to stand a little straighter. And then we were talking about the grill, and I noticed his hand is doing this. I said, I'm sorry, I hope you don't mind, but do you have Parkinson's? He said, yeah, I was diagnosed 6 years ago. I said, well, after 5 years, said the VA just awarded me a disability rating, so now I can go to the VA healthcare and such. And he goes, oh, yeah, I was during the war. He's in his 70s. That actually got sprayed with Agent Orange.
Oh, man.
And I said, well, have you talked to anybody in the VA? And he said, no. And at that point, I almost got in my soapbox and like, why? But then I just said, well, let me give you the reason why she wanted. I mean, it took me 5 years, but my disability got backdated. So I got a check in the mail, and now I'm getting a check every month, and it's tax-free, state and local. I said, just for the monetary aspect of it, who doesn't want free money? And you have a direct relation. I mean, you were sprayed with Agent Orange. That's a presumption. Yeah. The Parkinson's is a 100% presumption that that's what caused it. And I sent him a bunch of information. I haven't heard back from him yet, which kind of like, I just want to pick up the phone and say, are you doing anything with this?
Right. Take what they'll give you, the extra health care, anything.
Yeah. That's
a cause,
Well, I noticed his wife's eyes got a little bit bigger when I said about the money.
Free money.
Free money. But that's the part that gets frustrated when you're having a conversation where, like you said, someone 7 years later about I was at my Rocksteady boxing program a while back, and a lady, she was newly diagnosed, and I introduced myself because I'm with Davis Finney. I always keep my cards with me. I said, so let me ask you, what are you taking? She goes, I'm not sure. I think it's called Rebobamine. I said, oh, you mean Ropinol? She goes, yeah. I said, how many milligrams? She goes, I'm not sure. I just have the little jar, and it tells me to take like 1 tablet twice a day. I'm like, well, do you know what it does? Do you know what a dopamine agonist is? Do you know what the side effects are? She goes, no, my doctor just told me to take these, and I'm taking them. And there's a part of me that just wanted to slap them and say, what the hell's wrong with you?
Right. Learn what you're putting in your body. What's it supposed to do? And
yeah,
like my first question is, hey, the doctor prescribes this medication. Okay, what is it? Is it common? What's it supposed to do? How's it supposed to work? And how do I take it to make it work at its best? And what's the level of, like, is it 2 milligrams, 5 milligrams? What an average? I ask so many questions. They look at me like, just read the damn pharmacy list. And then I go right to the pharmacist too. I want the specialist. So I ask the pharmacist every time, what is this? What's it supposed to do? And then when I found on Michelle's website on the Parkinson School, she has a whole video section of describes every medication, just like all those questions. Here's what it is. Here's what it's supposed to do. People commonly take this much. And then you can at least make that educated decision and say, well, yeah, I need this, or no, I don't want to try this. When my first drug they wanted me to try was Nupro patch. And I read one of the side effects was narcolepsy and just falling asleep. And I said, well, I still drive for work. I visit my clients, and I'm doing 75 miles in the left lane of the freeway most of the time, and I can just fall asleep.
So let's give a plug to you. What do you do? Is it the Parkinson's coach thing that you do with clients?
That I'd love to do that full time, and I just want to. That's for just providing like the information for people and trying to help get better quality of life. And then I've been in the restoration industry. My company I represent cleans up fires and floods. And,
okay.
And I basically market to insurance companies, brokers, agents, adjusters, and plumbers. When they see a flood or something, they can refer us in. And
that's good.
It's kind of like getting paid to socialize at this point. After 25 years, a lot of my clients are, we've become friends, and they keep referring. It's like repeat business. And I always give a plug to my company, because as far as making accommodations for what I've been through, they did whatever they had to help me.
That's great.
Knowing like, okay, you don't have to drive around the Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, Manhattan anymore. I don't have to sit in traffic. I can do most of my work from my home office, and phone calls, emails, and I go to a bunch of events. So it's kind of like going to catering halls and restaurants and lunch meetings and taking people to dinner or lunch myself. And thank God I still have repeat business, because that's one point I'm at now is like the disability thing. And I did take out a long-term disability plan years ago, thank God. And if I do go out, I'll get 60% of my base pay till I'm 65 years old.
Now, is it? Oh, because you paid for that out of your own pocket, right?
Right. But what they do is
If a company pays for it, it's considered taxable income. If you pay for it, it's not
Right, it
taxable
came out of
income
my money. And what they'll do though, I have to still be working, put a claim in, then they're going to tell me that I have to apply to Social Security disability.
because they're going to offset.
Right. And then I have to tell Social Security when's my last day of work. And it's like, well, I don't want to leave unless I absolutely have to, but because I don't want to apply and then say they might deny it. But I've spoke to that law firm, Allsup. I've seen them on a few different webinar, like support groups, and that's all they do. And they said, you're pretty much 99%, you're going to be approved. And I give a plug out to my company because they've whatever I needed from day one. Before I even got ill, it was like, what do you need to do your job? They just gave it to me and said, go do your job.
That's great.
No bullshit micromanagement, and they're just great to their employees. So it's if I was at another company, I don't think I would have had to go out on disability earlier.
So, I ended up because I was in management, and I like to say I managed chaos. And when you have Parkinson's, managing chaos is probably the worst thing you could be doing because the stress level got so high that almost to the point I couldn't function. So I knew if I was going to stay in that position, I knew I couldn't stay in that position. So that's when I started the process going short-term disability, then Social Security disability, long-term disability. And now with the VA, I had my VA pension, if you will. So I had like multiple revenue streams coming in at this point, but it's good because I'm not worried about money. I haven't worked since, oh God, I think I haven't worked since 2000, the end of 1999, the end of 2019. I'm sorry. The brain is the first thing to go with Parkinson's.
Right, we get worn down with all that chaos. And I just met with my company yesterday, and I was explaining that, like, when I leave, I'm going to start to introduce my clients to some of the other reps that I work with. But I said that's where the problem lies: maintaining my existing customer database. It's like I'm friends with them, so that's kind of on the easy side.
Mm-hmm.
Hunting for new business is where my brain gets that tired, like, because that's the chaos. You have
Right.
cold calling people that don't know you. They're getting cold called by, like, we're a very competitive industry up here. There's probably 100 restoration companies just on Long Island, and they're all trying to get the same business. And then I call it the financial posturing. You go to all these events and people are just
Oh,
got
yeah.
the nicest suit, whose company is bigger, who's got the better car and more trucks, and
Who's
I'm
buying
like,
me a ribeye versus a hamburger?
yeah, it's like, I don't care that you have two Maseratis. What did you do for somebody today? How'd you help your client? How can we help each other?
Well, one of the people that worked underneath me asked me one day, why is everybody your best friend? I'm like, why wouldn't they be? You just acknowledge, you keep that business because you're friends. I said,
Right.
first of all, it's better living your life as treating people as friends. It's just much easier. And I said, even from a business perspective, there's a slight business reason for doing it too, because if we have developed a friendship over the years, my alarm, we can take that relationship, and when we have hard times, whether it's you or I, we have a personal relationship. We can get through it.
Oh, absolutely. Having so many people that we can talk to. I mean, I have, over the 25 years, I probably know about 600-700 insurance brokers on Long Island, and I'm probably good friends with about 30 or 40 of them. And even just that, there are people that I'm really close with, and then people I see at just the functions, and they all ask every time too, "Hey, how you doing? How's the Parkinson's? How's things working? You
That's
look
great.
great." So it's that, having that huge network is great. That's one thing I'm afraid to leaving too. But when I look back on it, I say, I'm friends with a lot of these people, so I'll still go to
Yeah.
lunch with them, and that's a good community thing to have on top of all the other, like the holistic team we need to build to take care of
Yeah.
ourselves. And
I just really, I think differently than most people, and I approach it like I was in a sales meeting one morning, and one of the way we had it structured with the customers that we manage, if you're at this level, you call me. If you're at this level, you call, Duff. If you're at this level, you call inside. But so when I get a phone call, usually that means there's something wrong. And I answered one day a guy named Thomas. And I said, "Good morning, Thomas." And first thing he goes, "Tom, we got a problem." I said, "I know we have a problem, Thomas. It's 8:00. I haven't had my coffee. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to go get a cup of coffee. I'm going to get a cup of coffee. Call me back in 5 minutes and we'll take care of it." And I hang up on him. I've known him for years, right? So he calls back and I go, "Good morning, Thomas." He goes, "Good morning, Thomas." I said, "How may I help you?" And I quickly say, "Okay, thank you. I'm going to do this, this, and this. And if they don't follow up with you, then in like the next hour, then give me a call back." And Thanks for the chat. Thanks for calling me. And I was in the meeting because I had him on speakerphone. I tell everybody, shh, don't say a word. And they're looking at me. I said, this is how you develop relationships with people. Not that I'm using it to manipulate the situation, but to a certain extent I was.
You're setting the standards.
But I said at the same point too, is I treated him with respect. He treated me with respect after that, because there is no room in this relationship for people to yell at each other.
Absolutely. You got to set the level of business and how it's done. And when you become friends with people, it's easier to understand each other because
on a business note, do you ever use LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, yes, I'm on there.
Yeah, because I always, if I'm trying to get to you, the decision maker, and if I make a reach out to you in LinkedIn and you see who I am and what my title is and what I do, if you accept that, to me, you've accepted the fact that I'm going to call you as a cold call.
Absolutely.
That's the part that I loved about LinkedIn.
Now it's a cool call or a warm call.
Yeah, warm call. But
back when I first started in this industry, all we did was visit every insurance broker, every insurance agent in like neighborhoods. There's like, I can go in my town of Babylon, and there's probably 7 or 8 insurance agencies. So I can visit 15, 20 a day all month long and never get to the first one yet. And that's the way we developed the ratio. It was like face to face.
Yeah.
We saw each other. Doing it on the phone is difficult. Face to face is a little easier because you can read body language. And like there are times I walk into an office and I'm like, hi, I'm Dennis with Total Restoration, and I'm just going to leave this here. Thank you very much. And I leave because you can just sense like that. They don't want you there.
Yeah, I was in the restaurant industry. If you walk into a restaurant at lunchtime and try to pitch your company, that's a stupid thing to do.
That's not working.
No, but you may just want to say, hey, I don't want to take your time. Here's my card. Can I give you a call later this afternoon? Maybe we can set up a time to talk. But yeah, you got to be smart about it as well.
Right. Or ask, when's the best time to call you? Is this time good on Tuesday?
Yeah, I agree. But I miss that. That's one of the things about Parkinson's is not working. When I had to step down, but I miss that working, that sense of discipline and responsibility. And for me, it was difficult to make the transition to being like, the retired Tom.
Right. It's moving into a different world. And I'm at that point. The two things I have a little anxiety over is going 6 to 8 months without any income. When you file for Social Security disability, it can take 6 to 8 months, and then setting that up. And then I'm going to play more guitar when I don't have to work, when I don't have to do anything. I'm going to, I have 2 dogs that we rescue dogs. I used to breed German Shepherds years ago. Now the last 20 years, we just rescue them, but I'll spend more time with my dogs, and I'm trying to do more, I guess, advocacy and talk more about and bring awareness to our area or anywhere. Like, hey, this is Parkinson's. Yeah, it sucks at times, but here's things we can do, and here's the bright side that we can look at it and try to promote that more. I'm even trying to put together a fundraiser, like comedy show, get like 10 comedians. Laugh off Parkinson's. And
so you mentioned dogs. I was in the Army. That's a guy working in the tech dog. I'm the idiot in the up suit being chewed up.
I used to do that myself. I'd get in the suits. We work with the police and like guys from Belgium. I used to compete in the one from Germany called Schutzen.
Oh yeah,
that was fun. Yeah. I had some nice working bloodline German Shepherds that were.
I loved working with those dogs.
Yeah,
I remember after I was in for initially 3 years, and when it came time for reenlistment, I was talking to the reenlistment recruiter and said, I want to go to bomb dog school, which I understand is a 6-year commitment. You guarantee me the school, I'm in for 6. I mean, that's like a total of 9, which is almost half of 20, which is almost 30. You get me that school and I'm a lifer. And he said, well, why don't you sign up for 6 and I'll try to get you to school. And I remember saying to him, I have the GI Bill. I'm either going to college or I'm going to bomb dog school. The decision is yours. He said, go to college, which I thought was interesting because he kind of knew that he wasn't going to get me to school. He couldn't guarantee me the school.
Right. Can't guarantee it because that's a great profession. I love. I used to work with the dogs doing drug and bomb work, and I had to tell them after a while, I'm like, look, I'm not teaching your dogs how to sniff out marijuana anymore because I think it should be legal. I'll help you with the other drugs, the coke, the meth, the bombs, but no.
Do you know that Dr. Miskey, she trained dogs to sniff Parkinson's?
Yeah, the earwax. Is that pretty wild?
Yeah, I mean, there was a study that I read, which is interesting. There's a lady, I guess, somewhere in Denmark, Norway, who smells at a molecular level, they say. So they did a thing where I think it was 6 or 12, I can't remember, but they gave her 6 shirts that were worn by people without Parkinson's, 6 shirts that were worn by people with Parkinson's, and she didn't know which was which. So she did the sniff test, and she got them all right. But even more interesting, he goes, the 2 of the people that didn't have Parkinson's, she said they're going to have Parkinson's because and certainly enough, like a couple of years later, they were diagnosed with Parkinson's.
That's amazing.
My wife said to me once, she goes, "You have this musky smell about you," and I'm like, "What?" Because I don't smell anymore, And I said, "What do you mean musky?" She goes, "Well, you have this smell," and so I Googled up musky smell Parkinson's, and that's how I learned about that research. But she basically did something similar where she took, I think, shirts or things, and she laid them on the floor, and she'd work the dogs, and within a short period of time, the dogs would be able to make out the smell of Parkinson's.
Yeah, she told me she was taking earwax from people with Parkinson's, got the dogs trained.
I suggested that she should take those dogs to every diner at 5 o'clock, and she's got it.
Well, she said there's unfortunately,
and you could probably find a lot of people with Parkinson's.
There was unfortunately like some privacy issue or something, she said, where people in her office, when the dog's there, the dog would alert to somebody that's the Parkinson's patient's family member. And she can't tell them, like, hey, my dog hits on Parkinson's, because she goes, there was some kind of, whatever the law, she said, for the medical community. She's like, my dog's hitting on people and I can't even tell them, Like, I mean, well, what you could do, like in public, I told her, when the dog sits next to someone, whatever the indicator is, you can say, oh, I have a scent dog, he detects Parkinson's. Don't tell the person you have just say, my dog detects Parkinson's. Like, maybe they'll take the hint and go to the doctor and get checked.
Well, one of the things I'm doing now that I just, in the first phase of it, is I'm a peer reviewer with Department of Defense. So if you're going to submit a request for funding for Parkinson's research and you submit it through the Department of Defense, I represent the Parkinson's community and I read those studies. There's studies like 100 pages long, but there's only like the lay abstract and another part that I have to read, which is maybe 2-3 pages. And then I write a critique based on how I see, or how the Parkinson's community sees this. And there's a couple, without going into detail, because I can't go into detail, but there's 7 of them, and they're all, what gives me a lot of hope is they're all science driven. They're not because they understand that there's that observational bias involved. Your neurologist is going to see certain things. My neurologist will see certain things. He's going to prescribe those drugs that he's comfortable with, same. But when you can take this information and make it digital or data driven, then it takes the guesswork out, or the rater bias, as I like to refer to it as.
Absolutely.
But there's one in particular that I really like the idea. It's like a watch with a sensor in it. And the sensor can pick up those biochemical changes in the skin. And if it recognizes as Parkinson's, it can then give you an alert. But my thought was on that one, I'm like, I really like the idea, but my critique was that if you're trying to find people who have Parkinson's who don't know they have Parkinson's, how are you going to get that sensor to the right people?
Right. You're just going to give them to everybody and say, wear this.
But the fact is that there's so many different novel approaches, and I really enjoy that. I got one more to do, and I did that last because I said the math is really hard. I got to figure this one out.
Yeah, numbers get a little difficult.
But that's the thing I'm looking for is like, and so when you mention holistic, how do you approach your Parkinson's from that perspective?
I guess when I use holistic, I meant for like, what can I do and what's natural. And I know natural is a funny used word these days. Just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good. But when it comes to foods, it's like whole foods. I don't eat processed foods. I don't eat, anything in the middle of the supermarket, so to say.
Right.
I want the ingredients to be whole. Like if there's more than 4 or 5 ingredients in something, I'm not eating it. And
same here.
I've been called a pain in the ass to go out to lunch or dinner with because I ask a lot of questions. And there was a time where I thought they said I might have diverticulitis, don't eat nuts and seeds. And every restaurant, I'm like, all right, I don't eat bread and grain. So is that thing floured before you cook it? Are there nuts in there? Are the seeds in with the peppers? And then my doctor's like, no, you don't have to. Years later, he goes, you don't have to avoid nuts and seeds. And then I stopped asking so many questions because it's hard eating out a lot to know. But most restaurants, like good restaurants, and like above like the Applebee's and the Chambers, they're mostly having real food. They're not using pre-boxed crap. And So holistic that way, like I want to eat, eggs and the product itself, the broccoli, the vegetables, the berries. I love the blackberries and blueberries and
Hmm.
eating like try to eat the different colors. But I have my habits. I eat blackberries and blueberries all the time and bananas. I
Well,
don't
I'm
eat
just funny on the
raspberries.
food choices that she listed. I went down the list and I'm like, we don't do this, we don't do this, we don't do this. There's one that I don't think I ever be able to give up, and that's my fountain diet Pepsi. I love fountain, not bottled, not canned, but fountain diet Pepsi. It's my addiction.
Just like use it. Don't use it a lot. Like I went from it to the 80-20 rule because I can go extremely strict. And I did when a doctor years ago told me to go grain free. I had lost 80 pounds over 4 years of eating better and
Mm.
exercising more and eating less quantity. And I needed to lose some more and I just couldn't get there. And this one doctor said, stop eating grain, no bread, no grain. So I went 100% strict. What a pain it was to do it. I lost 50 pounds in 2 months.
Oh my God.
And after a year or so of that strict eating, it's very difficult. You go to someone's house for dinner and that's what they made. You're going to say, well, I don't eat that. I don't eat this. So I said, I'm going to go 80-20. And then when I met Dr. Mishley and one of the first things she said was, dairy on her food list was dairy. It's inflammatory in the first place. And I stopped drinking milk and like those products probably 25, 30 years ago. I love cheese and I always get good quality cheese. There's a
Hard
place by
cheese.
me. They make fresh mozzarella every Sunday morning, like fresh, real mozzarella.
Now
And so I said, all right,
you
yeah,
say it like it's supposed to be said.
mozzarella.
Mozzarella.
Yeah, I'm Italian. My grandparents would smack me, but it's like I went dairy. It took her a year to convince me. I said, let me try it. After 2 weeks, constipation went away, not eating cheese. After 3 months, my inflammation markers in my blood dropped by 20%. So I said, all right, I see some benefit here, even just on the constipation side. It was never bad, it was mild constipation here and there, but I stopped eating cheese and went away.
Mm.
So now I'm like 80-20. 20% of the time, I'm going to eat some cheese, but I only eat the best quality cheese I can get and fresh. And then certain cheeses I was reading, blue cheese, I think Parmesan and sharp cheddar cheeses all contain something that our body can turn to dopamine. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to eat those cheeses.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the meats. Like on her food chart, all meat is considered inflammatory. Turkey and wild fish were the only two that didn't seem to cause.
Right. I get tired of turkey and mild. I can eat fish a lot.
Yeah, I that's my main turkey and fish, but I do love beef, and I do notice if I eat beef, I have more energy, especially the next day.
Yeah, it's very protein.
Right, so 20% of the time, I'll have some good quality beef, or I love a place by me. It's like a gourmet hamburger place. They have lamb burgers that are, and it's small, so it's a small burger. You're getting some vegetables with it, the onions, tomatoes, lettuce, but we can't go 100%. Like I'm not going to eat any of this.
Do you eat it on a bun? You get your burger on a bun?
I do. I usually only eat the little bottom piece of the bun, and it's a sourdough. So the only breads I really eat are like a heavy grain like pumpernickel or sourdough, because sourdough made fresh is actually beneficial for us. And I try to limit how much of it. I was making my own sourdough bread. It's a long process.
Do you still have the starter?
Yeah, I had starter alive for like 2 years, and the bread. People were calling me for holidays. Hey, you're bringing over 2 loaves of that sourdough bread, right? But it was great right out of the oven. Slice it hot and put the butter. Let some butter melt. I get the grass-fed Kerry butter from Ireland, and that was the best. So now I found a couple of bakeries that make it, so I'll get it fresh and again, 20% of the time I'll eat that because you can't like if someone says you can never eat chocolate again. All we're going to think about is chocolate every day.
Right, I agree. Everything like you said, 80-20 rule. You got to do things in moderation.
Correct. And for some reason, like the things that get my brain tired, like you're saying, the chaos in certain business aspects, I have a memory I'm pretty strict to know, like, hey, I had 2 pieces of sourdough bread yesterday, so don't eat any more till Saturday.
Yeah.
And then I start looking forward to Saturday because I know, I can have a couple more slices of sourdough. But you have to if you can't regulate yourself internally, then I know some people, they write it down so they can look and say, oh, no, I had that 2 days ago. So.
Well, we have, like, generally speaking, at night, we just do a protein and a vegetable. Like last night, I made chicken piccata, and I had served that with green beans. The night before, we had grilled salmon with Brussels sprouts. And for lunch we try to have a salad with some kind of sliced turkey for protein. And breakfast we eat eggs. So I'm trying to wean myself away from all that stuff as well. I seem to hit a plateau on my weight. I'm like six with the back surgery and the hip. I was inactive for a couple of years, and I gotten up to 250. Now I'm down to like 228. I still want to get down at least another 10 pounds.
It's definitely going to help our joints and whatnot. There was one time in 2007, I thought I was losing weight. I was actually 360 something pounds.
Oh my God. That's
I had scored,
me.
It was mad, and I held it well. People are like, oh, what are you, like 250? I'm like, no, I'm 370 almost. And when I was a bodybuilder at 250, people say, man, what are you, three and a quarter, 350, So it's the way it looks. And when I saw a picture of myself on New Year's Eve, 2006 into 2007, I was leaning forward eating a hot wing because I didn't want the sauce to drip on my belly. That's
you go out, you wear the dress up sweatpants.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at
the dark gray ones.
I'm like, that's it, and that's when I changed it. And it took 4 years. I lost 80. Then the grain free, I lost another 50, and I got down to like 235 pounds, and I was uncomfortable. I'm like, I can't not eat certain breads or certain carbs. And when I went back to like the 80-20 thing, I came back up to 270 pounds. I've been here for
how tall are you?
Almost 10 years. I'm almost 6'2".
Same here.
But I have like the body, like you said, I look like a linebacker or something. I have thick legs and athletic legs. And the guys, when I was bodybuilding, they thought I was taking steroids because my quadriceps and my calves were so big. And it's like a natural thing. I carried in my belly. Like if I can lose like 30 pounds, get down to 245, 250 would be perfect. But I hide it well. People even today, they say, man, what are you back down to 200 pounds? I'm like,
I sort of do the same, but I just, I would go to the beach or the pool and I'm like a little self-conscious because of my belly. And so my wife's like, I'm going to wear a shirt, not in the water, because it is something that I want to, I'm 65 now and I play pickleball 3 times a week. We go to spin class 3 times a week.
It's diet, man. When I was a personal trainer for a while years back, and one thing I told people I learned the hard way, you cannot exercise your way out of a poor diet.
Yeah. So what do you have for breakfast?
Breakfast, I go back and forth between, I'll make like a broccoli omelet, but I call it more of a frittata because I put a lot of broccoli. I'll use some like very thin sliced cheddar or a Swiss cheese. And then I've been loving the hot oat bran cereal lately. So I make the hot oat bran cereal. It's high fiber. I'll add some bananas, blackberries, and walnuts to it.
Okay.
I go between those 2 things for breakfast.
Yeah, I try to do an omelet with, either a minimum of scrambled egg, but then I throw in mushrooms, broccoli, kind of like whatever protein or vegetables I want to get rid of. If I have a little extra onion, I'll put some onion in there. It's like we used to say in the restaurant industry, never order the fish of the day or the soup of the day on Monday. Because the fish of the day is what's left over from the weekend, and the soup of the day is what's left over from the weekend.
Right. Never get the fish of the day.
So how Italian are you? Are you Italian?
All Italian, yeah. I'm like 3rd generation though. My grandparents were born here in the 20s. And I think, like they say, we were Napolitan from the north end of the boot. And, my mom's side, her cousins owned a bakery, and her other cousins, my grandparents owned a Italian pork store in the 50s and 60s.
Well, we went to Italy last summer for a while. I was doing the research on the last name. It's Cosentino. And I always saw it because in the boot, you have Cosenza, which is like in the instep of the boot. And Tino means coming from. So we always assumed we were Southern Italian on my father's side, coming from Cosenza. But I traced my name, our last name back to 1650. It was like 10 generations. Wow. And they were born, lived, and died right outside of Palermo. So I'm like, wow. I guess that makes me Sicilian. They may have come from the boot, but from 1650 to my great grandfather came over when he was 3, like in 1888. He was the first one to grow up in America. And then it was my grandfather, my father, and myself. But we did, when I was doing my background, we went about 3 generations in from 1650. I found, as I was researching it, I found someone else who made reference to the same Lorenzo. So I reached out to him, and it turns out that this guy Lorenzo had 2 sons. One was Vincenzo, which is my line, and one was Giuseppe, which was his line. So we met them in Sicily, in Palermo,
Oh
spent the
wow.
full day. It was really cool because they were so excited to meet someone from with the same, even though it's the bloodline is but someone from the same family that lives in the U.S.
Yeah, that's amazing doing that.
And this is where I became the stupid American, because I just assumed in Palermo everyone would have a passing understanding of English, but he spoke English. His sister spoke English. His father spoke a little bit, but his great uncle didn't say a word. And my grandfather was deaf, so I never really learned the language either. I learned,
Wow.
this and all that other.
Right,
Thing.
all the body language.
But so it was his great uncle and I. We had a great time together. I have no idea what we talked about, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome going back. It's like history meeting each other.
And what I found though in Italy, pizza and gelato, no calories.
Really?
Oh yeah, because when you're walking we did it every day. We were like walking. We worked it all off, but we indulged ourselves with pizza and gelato almost every day.
Yeah, I love good gelato, man. I got to take a little portion and walk away from wherever it is, because we only bring home, like when we do get some gelato now, I only bring home like a little pint. We split it, because if we bring home a half gallon, we're eating the whole thing.
Well, I open the freezer every now and then in hopes that there's something there, and there's not, unfortunately.
But yeah, we can't keep that in the house. I say I have a food addiction like an alcoholic does to alcohol. I'm a foodaholic, so if it's in the house,
if it's not here, I don't crave it. But if it's here, I'm going to eat it.
Right, exactly. You know it's there. It's calling us to eat it, and
when I get those potato chips, you just can't eat one.
Right, you eat the whole bag. I found a bag of these chips made from cassava flour. They're tortilla chips, and they're like a lime sea salt.
Oh, okay.
They're so good. I was just kind of snacking on them, watching a movie, and I ate the whole bag, and it was 5 servings in the bag. So
well, it's funny because in the cotta recipe, instead of flour, they recommended that flour.
Yeah, because that's high in protein and higher in fiber too. I found like it was each serving was almost like 4 or 5 grams of fiber, and I ate a full 5 servings. So I had my fiber for the day.
You had your fiber for the week. That helped.
It tastes great. That lime sea salt flavor is just like
I love
need
that
spice to like cook with. You know.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the hour, so we kind of like to keep this around an hour because I know we have lives and such. But I just want to say it was really a pleasure talking with you. And if there's anything you want to throw out to the community at the end, just any words of advice or wisdom or.
Best advice I can give is what was given to me when I first started, and that was build your team around you. A great neurologist, get an integrative doctor to look at your whole body, work with a nutritionist like Kelly Morrow at Laura's office. Great nutritionist, and she's taking the data from Lori and teaching people how to apply it in their everyday to eat, and just always try to look forward. And the bad days are okay. Like I say, I've only been dealing with this for 5 years now.
Yeah.
And I've learned that, I forgot what person said it. I think it was Richard Lewis. He said, enjoy the good days, and the bad days, they'll pass. And just keep learning, keeps learning. And I highly recommend people join Dr. Mishley's Parkinson School. It's like $100 a year.
Yeah.
And she has all the videos you can watch whenever you want. Everything from what is Parkinson's, where's the research, what the meds supposed to do, how to eat, the tests you should do. And she updates it every month, so that it's like that's an ongoing learning, and just go to the good foundations that are providing the positive information, and visualize where you want it to go, and just exercise every day and stop watching the news.
I always have to plug a book from a friend of mine that wrote it on exercise. Parkinson's: How to Reduce Symptoms Through Exercise. You can get this on Amazon. It's a great book.
That's the best thing. That's the first thing we can do for because that's actually data that shows it can slow down progression, and it can help with symptoms. And it's the high intensity interval training, right? The interval training is
like she writes. What I like about it, she does interviews with people as well, but she's written this with a couple other authors who are in the profession, and it's just a good book for people who want to get into it. Her name is Kristen. Let me give you just for our fans out there. It's Kristen Meldrum, Meldurm, and this is on Amazon.
Definitely get it. Add it to my library.
Yeah.
What's the last name again?
Oh, Meldrum, Meldrum. So one last question for you. You heard of the Long Island Lizards, the lacrosse team?
Yeah, yeah.
Hate them. Hate them.
Really? Who you rooting for?
We grew up outside Baltimore, so my son played for a team called the Rough Riders, which whenever we played the Long Island Lizards, they were just so goddamn good.
Oh, really? I don't follow lacrosse, but yeah.
My son played D3 college, which was great, but the Long Island, when they came down, we knew we were in for, it was a game. You knew you had to play your best.
It's going to be a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the hottest sports on Long Island, the lacrosse. I live behind a high school football field, and between the lacrosse and the soccer, there's more activity than the football.
Well, my son went to Swarthmore, which is outside of Philly, and a lot of the players were from the New Jersey area. And the first game we went to, freshman year, first game, there's a New Jersey, and they bring their whole family. I mean, it's just not like mom and dad. It's like the aunts, the uncles, the whole family. And they're yelling at the kids in that beautiful New Jersey accent, you know, the play smarter. And I'm like, excuse me, I'm first year. That's my son. This is Swarthmore. They're smart. Can you tell them to play better? And they start doing with that, play better. It was so funny. It's like we became good friends. It was better to go there to watch them than to watch the game. That was entertainment. The game was the game, which you could watch on film later, but that was priceless.
That's great.
All right. Well, we'll talk soon. Hopefully I'll see you at the next YOPD meeting.
Definitely. I love that group too.
Yeah, and one good plug for Anna Grill, ANNA Grill. Look her up. She's got a great group for YOPD, and it's got such good information. And it's also one of those communities where you can just sit down and have a conversation. And that's how I met Dennis.
And the group is great because everyone I've met in those calls, when they break us down into little groups, it's everyone.
Yeah, I like
a lot
that.
of people are sharing a lot of it. You know, it's like Vegas. You know, we talk about things that stay there, and
Yep.
people share information that are helping
It's
each
a
other.
safe place.
Yeah, it's a great place.
All right, my friend. I'll see you then.
All right,
Thanks
that's
for
great.
doing this with us.
Hey, anytime. Thank you very much. I love to talk about it.
Okay, now we're off. We ended it. What did we end it? God, this is where the technical difficulties come in.
Still live, coming at you. I could tell them to go to my